We're here today with Dr. Diana Parker. She's a postdoctoral associate at the Department of Geographical Sciences, and she'll talk about forest loss in Indonesia in the past 30 years. Dr. Parker, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
Could you explain or talk a little bit about your study?
Yeah, so we were looking at deforestation in Indonesia from 1991 to 2020, and we were specifically interested in what happened to the land after the forest was cleared, because that can give you a really good idea of why deforestation is occurring in the first place. But surprisingly, in Indonesia, we found that a really large area, so about half, more than half of the total area that was cleared during that 30-year period, was left seemingly unused after the deforestation took place. So no crops were planted, there was no land use that we could detect, and these areas were left idle sometimes for years after forest loss. And to give you an idea of the scale of this phenomenon, over that 30-year period, Indonesia lost 1/4 of its total old growth primary forest, an area roughly 50 times the size of the island of Bali. And of that area, 44% was left idle for at least 5 years after forest loss. So it's a really, really large area, and it's an important driver of deforestation that really has not gotten a lot of attention.
Why would such a large area of forest be cleared and then left idle?
Yeah, so deforestation fires is one factor, especially during drought events, during severe El Nino years. And scientists have known for a long time that fires occurring during these severe El Nino events have caused deforestation in Indonesia. So a lot of people have assumed that most of this underutilized land was linked to these deforestation fires. But when we were looking at the satellite imagery, we saw that while some of the idle land was caused by deforestation fires, more than half was not. So these areas were cleared intentionally by people, and while fire might have been used to clear the debris after trees were cut down, the actual deforestation event was not caused by a forest fire.
So if not forest fires, what could be causing them?
Demand for timber might have been one factor, but most of these areas were logged before they were cleared. So by the time the deforestation event took place, the high-value timber had already been removed. So to try to understand what else might be going on, we tracked these idle areas over time, and we found that in many of these idle areas, they were eventually converted to a productive use, even if it was years after the forests were initially cleared. And when this happened, palm oil plantations were almost always the outcome, especially in areas that were not cleared by forest fire.
It's interesting because Indonesia is the largest producer of palm oil in the world, right? So what does that say about palm oil production?
The palm oil industry has gotten a lot of negative attention for its links to deforestation. And what our study suggests is that land speculation for future palm oil production is a major driver of idle land creation in Indonesia. And so what this means is that the total area of land that is deforested for palm oil production is probably much larger than what was previously believed. So the environmental footprint of the commodity is also much greater. But what it also means is that Indonesia has a really large area of unused deforested land that could potentially be used for commodity production in the future without the need to clear any additional forests.
What are the implications in general?
More and more countries, governments, private sector companies have been trying to eliminate deforestation-linked products from their supply chain. One really important example of this is the EU regulation on deforestation-free products, or the EUDR. This is a policy that prohibits the import of certain products, including palm oil, that are linked to deforestation into the EU. But the EUDR only applies to commodities that are planted on land deforested after 2020. And in Indonesia, we found that there are millions of hectares of land that were deforested before 2020 that could potentially be used for palm oil production without the need to clear any additional primary forests.
Would it be dangerous for the environment if those cleared land be turned into palm oil plantations?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, and it depends on the forest protection policies that are in place. So if there are strict policies to prevent the clearing of additional natural forests, and these policies are effectively enforced, then expanding palm oil production into these idle areas could potentially be a way to increase commodity production without doing further harm to natural forest ecosystems. So it wouldn't undo the damage that has already been done, but it could prevent future forest loss. But if there are not policies in place to protect the remaining forests, then converting idle areas to palm oil plantations could just cause more demand for idle land, cause people to clear additional land, hoping that they can eventually turn it into a palm oil plantation or can eventually sell it to somebody that might want to turn it into a palm oil plantation.
Any other interesting finding in the study?
Yeah, we did find one really hopeful finding. So in the last few years of the study, Indonesia experienced a really, really dramatic decline in deforestation. So from 2017 to 2020, Indonesia saw the very lowest deforestation rates that we observed during the entire study period. And this means that Indonesia is one of the few tropical forest countries that's been able to successfully slow deforestation in recent years. So let's hope this positive momentum can continue.
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Parker.
Thank you so much.
Goodbye.
Bye.